Hi folks, in this video, we're going to be talking about QuickBooks Desktop and specifically how to allocate your overhead or admin expenses across multiple classes after the fact. And what I did here is I went to reports, company financial, and did a profit and loss by class. So this is a standard profit and loss by class. And generally speaking, in my experience, when people are tracking classes, they do a pretty good job at assigning a class to income, to invoices, and assigning classes to direct costs, such as cost of goods sold. So very often I see a profit and loss by class in which the classes are all pretty much filled in on the sales and COGS part. But when it comes to expenses, most of the expenses are blank on the classes and they're sitting all either unclassified or under a admin or overhead type of class. So in this particular example, I don't have anything unclassified. That means that every single expense had a class in it, and we had a catch-all admin overhead class that you see right here in this fourth column, kind of picking up all those expenses. So what we're trying to talk about in this video is how do we take then those numbers and allocate them across the classes. There's two ways to do this. First way is manually. We're going to do a journal entry, and I'm going to show you how to do that so we can sort of illustrate the example, and contextually you can understand what the solution is. The second way to do it is by creating a journal entry outside of QuickBooks using Excel and running a macro that would take the numbers and automatically allocate them all to each class based on a percentage that you give it, and then build a particular file that can be imported into QuickBooks. Now that macro doesn't exist, just out there. That's something I built, and I did it for my practice because I have a lot of clients that have like real estate, and they have like one business with 7 different properties, and they have a bunch of admin expenses, and they want us to have a P&L by class because of the way they're going to report it on the tax return, or just for management purposes. They want to know what would be the profit and loss for each of those classes if you were to allocate those expenses. Like right now, if you look at Class A, it looks like it's profitable. Class B is profitable. Class C is profitable. But we have a bunch of admin expenses, negative 7,000, that if we were to start allocating this across classes, each class will be less profitable, and it could lead to a different managerial decision. So I'm going to show you that second option, which is using my macro. And I do sell that macro, so you're going to have to see the demonstration and go, okay, that works for me. And then I'll show you how you can buy it and follow the instructions exactly how I do it. But you don't have to buy anything. I'm going to show you how to do it manually with a journal entry. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this left navigation bar here so I have a little bit more real estate on the screen. And then I'm going to go into Company and click on General Journal Entry. Select that, and then I'm going to put the profit and loss and the journal entry next to each other. So I'm going to go to Window, and then I'm going to do Tile Vertically, and basically I can see them next to each other. Now I could play with these sizes a little bit until I get sort of the most comfortable situation here. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do my journal entry. I'm going to pick the date that falls within the period of that report. Let's assume that that date, it's there, fine, let's not bother with that. And now we're going to do the allocation. So for example, we have admin here for $1,000 on job-related costs. So the first thing we do here is we type job-related costs. There we go. And let's say that the split is going to be 50% Class A, 20% Class B, and 30% Class C. That decision you make on your own. That's a managerial decision. We're going to do 50, 20, and 30. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove that expense from the admin class. So we're going to credit that $1,000, and that is a credit. That's to remove an expense. And then the class we're going to pick in this case would be Class C. Now, in the event, sorry, not Class C. I was seeing if you're paying attention. It's actually admin. And what we're doing here is we're removing the $1,000 from the admin class so we can reallocate it to Class A, B, and C. And this is manually through a journal entry. If this wasn't in an admin class, if this happened to be in an unclassified class, and I'll show you an example. I'm going to go ahead and move this one, and I'll remove the class for this one just so you can see both options here, how to reallocate unclassified and how to reallocate stuff that's in admin. So this one right here is sitting under unclassified. So what this would look like then is I wouldn't have any class at all here. that would be blank. So we'll show you as we do more examples, that's gonna make more sense. Now we're gonna allocate, we said 50% to class A, and that was 50% to class A. And then let me just kind of copy and paste this here to make it a little bit easier. Then it will be 30% class B, we decided, and or 20% class B, and then 30% class C. I guess that was a decision that we made prior. So that's going to be the allocation there, 50% class A, 20% class B, 30% class C. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy job-related costs 3 times. So I'm just pasting it 3 times. And now I'm going to put the allocated amount of the 1,000 based on the percentage. So I take $1,000, multiply it times 0.50, which is 50%. That gives me 500. Then I take $1,000, multiply that times 0.20. That gives me 200. And then I take $1,000, multiply it times 0.30, and that will give me $300. Now I'm going to click Save here. Okay, and the next step is after I put in those 3 classes in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now select Class A, then Class B, and then Class C. So I went into Class and selected the 3 classes. This was just a note for illustration. It doesn't matter what the memo says. What matters is the application of that class. So right now you see $1,000 sitting there unclassified. When I hit Save here and I refresh the report, you're going to see, and I want you to pay attention, you're going to see the $1,000 sort of move across the multiple classes. So let me make this journal entry a little bit smaller here so you can clearly see. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save, and now you're going to see it. So Save, hit Yes, and now we're going to see the $1,000 went away and it got redistributed across the multiple classes. Now let's move this advertising here from admin so we can do one more example. So I'm going to do a second example here. I'm going to type advertising, and then we're going to start with 5350, which is the credit, and the class in this case I'm not going to leave blank. I'm actually going to put admin, because in the first example I left it blank because I was sitting there unclassified. Now it's no longer unclassified, it's actually under the admin class, the overhead admin class. People give it different names. Some people call it general, overhead admin, that sort of thing. So we're going to move it out of the admin class and now into the 3 classes. So I'm going to take this and paste 3 times, and I'll take the memo and paste it 3 times one more time. You don't have to copy the memo. The memo is not important. I'm doing it to make it easier to see. And then I'm going to come in here and put class A, B, and C. So then I'm going to take that number, multiply the first one times 4.50. That gives me 50%. Same number, 5350 times 0.20. That gives me that number. And then 5350 times 0.30. Again, I'm doing the inline calculation. You can do this outside if you want to. Hit tab, and there we go. So again, we see advertising here for 5350. As soon as I hit save up here, you're going to see that number get reallocated across multiple classes. I'm going to click on save, click on yes, and there we go. I guess we missed 50 cents somewhere in here, so I'm just going to manually just assign the 50 cents. That's because I made the mistake and did the calculation wrong. So let me do it really quick here and fix my journal entry. Okay, that's fine to have errors, and I won't edit this. You're actually going to see me post this with errors because in the real world this happens. Okay, so let me repaste that number and multiply that times the allocation amount. Go ahead and click on save one more time, and there it goes. That got fixed. So you have to make sure that you use the correct numbers and spread that those numbers across multiple classes. And I'll show you one more, which is this office supplies being a negative number, and that would be the opposite of an expense. So the way this would work is we'll do office supplies, and instead of doing a credit, I will be debiting it. So I'll do 75.54. That's going to come from admin, and then copy and paste that 3 times. Okay, the first one, multiply that times 0.50. Then the next one, I'm going to copy and paste that in there, multiply that times 0.20. And the last one, multiply that times 0.30. And sometimes you'll run into a situation where you have a rounding error. And if that happens, if you have a rounding error at the end, in this case, we don't have a rounding error, but in some cases you could have that. Let's say, for example, if this happened to be, let's say, a 55, let's see if that will render a rounding error. Let's just see what that would look like. So times 50, and then times 20, and then the last one times 30. It doesn't happen very often, but will this give me this one? Okay, there we go. Perfect example. This one gave me a rounding error. So if you do get a rounding error of some sort, then you have to fix the rounding error by removing it from the smallest number or the biggest number. So that's something that could happen. Rounding errors are real. As a matter of fact, let's follow through with this one. And I'm going to just change this transaction so we can see sort of a real world rounding error issue. And this is totally normal. This could happen. So let me save that. That way we do have a situation where we do need to move the entire 55 cents out of there. So what would I do in this point? I would adjust it from one of the classes. I'm just going to take it from the very last one, lower that from 7 to a 6, delete the rounding error, and then my math is correct, 100%. I'm good to go. I could just delete this line and it won't bother me anymore. And then I have to come in here and go from, this first one's supposed to be admin actually, and then go to class A, B, and C. So that last piece of the class is really important because I didn't put that correctly in the first place. I'm going to click on save, click on yes, and there we go. We move that across. It's a negative expense. I know it's weird, but this kind of stuff happens. Same kind of concept would happen with income. So let's just assume for a minute that we were doing this for income as well. So I'm gonna add another line of income here, just as an example. Okay, so I'm adding $500 into unclassified. So if I were to be moving income, which normally is not a good idea, income should be done naturally in its original transaction. But if for whatever reason you need to reallocate income as well, which is sort of a negative expense, you then need to do similar situation. So you would have to debit it 500, even though it doesn't say negative. Income is a negative in the profit and loss from the perspective of debits and credits. So I would have to debit it in order to decrease it. I know it's kind of weird. It's an accounting weird thing. So then I'm going to go ahead and paste this 3 times. The original class is blank because it's unclassified. And then we go class A, B, and C. And then we're going to take each of these percentages. So 500 times 0.20, and then the remaining value, 500 times 0.30. I know. Watching somebody do journal entries is like watching paint dry. I get it. So let's go ahead and click on save, okay? And then click on yes, and there we go. Now, there's a reason why I put things in the memo, and there's a very specific reason for that, and I'll explain why in a second. So for example, I'm gonna look at my job-related costs, right? So I'm gonna double-click on one of my job-related costs here in the report. Let me just maximize that so we forget about the journal entry for a second. Double-click on that, and then as I look at all the details, I see my memo there that says 50% Class A. So if that says 50% reallocated to Class A or whatever, overhead allocation, any notes you wanna put there that makes sense to you, it's much easier to read when you're looking at detailed reports. But for example, let me just go back here to vertically. We did an adjustment, I think it was on income, and we didn't put any memo on the income side or office supplies. So what happens if I double click on any of these office supplies, I double click on that and I look at my journal entry, there's no memo there. So like contextually, you don't know what happened. Like you have to double click on that, look at the journal entry, and then try to remember what you did. This is why I think that copy and pasting that memo there that says 50% Class A, or we can go 50% of admin reallocated to Class A or something like that, right? So again, we're just we are figuring out what is the best possible note that would make sense to you. So I'm going to add that note in there. So I click on save, and then we go back into our detailed journal entry, detailed report, and there's our note. So I think that not only you got to do the journal entry, pick the right source class, pick the right destination class, you got to make sure you put a note in it. So then when you're looking at the reports, that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so let's talk about the other technique, which is using my Excel macro to do this so we can show you how this works. Okay, I'm going to start by deleting the journal entry and closing that journal entry and opening up that profit and loss by class one more time. Now we have a couple of things in Unclassified, and the technique I'm going to show you with the spreadsheet works either with admin or Unclassified, but you're going to do sort of one at a time. So we're going to start by just doing the ones that are in admin first, and then we'll show you the ones that are Unclassified so you can kind of see how it works with both processes. So let me start with opening up the spreadsheet. So this is what the spreadsheet looks like when you first open it. You're going to have account, unclassified balance. Then we're going to have class, percent allocation, and then a button that says create journal template. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on here where it says enable content because it has a macro, so you have to turn on the macro features. And now what I want to do is I want to copy and paste all the accounts that I'm going to adjust in here, the unclassified balance or the admin balance, the overhead balance, the admin balance. I'm going to copy it here, and then I'm going to do my class allocation. So let's go back into QuickBooks. And because in QuickBooks, there's a certain trickiness to it, which is when you look at a profit and loss, if there are sub-accounts that illustrate with the indentation, this is not going to work. You're going to have to do this from the trial balance. It will not work from a straight profit and loss report. So we're gonna go ahead and leave that report. We're gonna go back to it, and the report we're gonna run in this case is going to be the trial balance. So we're gonna go to reports. We're gonna go to account and taxes, and then we're gonna go into trial balance. So once the trial balance pops up, I'm gonna maximize it. I'm gonna pick all dates because in this case I'm doing all dates. When in your world this would be like last month, last year, last quarter type of adjustment. I'm also gonna right-click here and make the font a little bigger just to make it easier to illustrate for the video. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm gonna make adjustments to some of these numbers that are here. However, this trial balance that I'm looking at, it's across all the classes. So in order to get the admin class, I'm gonna click on Customize Report, top left, click on that, click on Filters on the top left, then go into Class. So I have to find the class filter right there. And then I'm gonna select admin. It gets a little trickier when there's a missing class. We're gonna show you that next, but we're doing just the admin class for now. Then I'm gonna click OK. So perfect, here's what's going on in my admin class. Now I'm only doing the profit and loss report. So because of that, I'm gonna do one more filter. So go back to Customize Report in the top left. I'm gonna go into Filters, and then here where it says Account, which is the first filter that gets selected, I'm gonna click on the drop-down menu, and then I'm gonna select a category or an option here called All Ordinary Income and Expense. Basically, that means profit and loss. So I'm going to select that, and then click OK, and essentially I get just my profit and loss allocated to that class. Now, one other caveat. If I go into Edit Preferences and I have turned on under Accounting, Company Preferences, if I have turned on Use Account Numbers and click OK, this is not going to work, because when I bring in this information into Excel to copy and paste, all these account numbers are going to get in the way. So unfortunately, for the purposes of this process, if you're using account numbers, you got to turn off account numbers. So I'm going to go to Edit Preferences, go into Company Preferences, and then uncheck Use Account Numbers and click OK. That way I get the full path. So I get account and sub-account, because that's the way I need to copy and paste it into the spreadsheet. Okay, good. So I got the numbers here. Then I'm gonna go into Excel, export that to Excel. Again, I haven't done anything fancy in QuickBooks yet. All I've done is run the filtered trial balance report for the admin class. Now I have the data in Excel. I have only my profit and loss accounts. I have both spreadsheets open, the journal entry macro and the exported part from QuickBooks. Now I'm gonna delete the stuff I don't need. So I don't need column A, I can get rid of that. I don't need the total, I can get rid of that. I don't need column C, which is one empty thing there that we don't need. Delete that. And honestly, I don't need the first two, debit and credit. I know that. So I'm just gonna delete that. So now I'm to the point where I have my accounts on one side, I have my debits here, and I have my credits here. Now, the way the macro works, and I'm going to go back to the macro, is these numbers need to be represented in negative or positive based on whether they're debit or credit balances. From the context of this adjustment, since we're adjusting from a profit and loss report, we are going to do the debit and credit balances simply as debits minus credit. So we're going to do equals. The first one is a debit minus the credit, and then hit enter, just because QuickBooks can't produce a positive and negative trial balance. And then click and drag that down here. Let me make that font a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. And there it is. So now these are all the numbers represented in positives and negatives. Then at this point, I'm just going to copy these and paste values, just because I no longer need the debits and the credits. Delete the debits and the credits, and done. So now I got specifically what I want. I have my account names and their debit and credit balances represented in positive or negative. Now I can do number formatting. That's probably the best, safest one to use, number formatting. And then we're going to copy and paste those two columns, account name and value. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go back into my other spreadsheet, my macro, and then simply I'm going to paste values in there. So there we go. I have my accounts here, and let's make this font a little bit bigger again for the purposes of making the video a little bit easier to read. So I have all my accounts here. Now, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type up all my classes, and I'm going to type class A, and then class B, and then class C, and then do my percentage allocation. So we said it was 50%, and then 20%, and then 30%. Okay, so I have all my dollar values. I have my class allocations. This one happens to be a 0. It won't bother you. You can leave it there. That's fine. And then at this point, we're going to click on Create Reallocation Journal Entry. One really important note: nowhere is asking you what's the name of the unclassified account, or the admin account, or the overhead account. That goes in the next step. So right now, we're just doing the journal entry from no class. Then I'm going to click here. It says Create Reallocation Journal Entry. Click on that. Then what happens is on the second tab where it says Step 2 Output, I'm going to click on that. And then this is going to make the journal entry for me. This journal entry is really, really awesome. You're going to see the original dollar amounts being reclassified, and you're going to see a big memo that tells you how everything is being reclassified. This is hard-coded into the macro. So this is all going to be hard-coded in there, and it's going to copy and paste that information in the memo. And then you're going to see here where it says COGS, and it says reallocated 50% from unclassified, reallocated 20% from unclassified. Then here where it says class, I can simply just put admin. In this specific case, we're going from admin, and just fill those in because I do want to bring those in from admin. And then if I want to rename these that automatically set unclassified, I just copy that, select everything here, hit Control F on the keyboard, replace, type unclassified, and put here replace with admin class. Again, you can do this however you want. Click on replace all, okay, and close. And beautiful, it's all done for me. This journal entry is about to be pushed into QuickBooks Desktop. And the way it gets done, there's two ways. You can create a CSV file. So if you want to create a CSV file, then you're simply just going to see a spreadsheet that looks like a journal entry. And the reason we created this CSV file option, and I'm just going to minimize this for a second so we can see that CSV file, is because some people want to have just a clean CSV file that shows what this journal entry would look like. If you happen to be using QuickBooks Online, which is different than desktop, you can import this using apps like Transaction Pro Importer or a Sassant. There's multiple apps that can do imports. So this CSV file actually works when you have a third-party importing tool, or again, maybe you want to use it for your own amusement. It's up to you, whatever you want to use it for. What matters here, I'm going to go back to my journal entry, is that there's a button here that says Process IIF File. So when I click on process IIF file, I'm going to click on confirm selection. And then it's going to ask me, what do you want to call this IIF? So I'm just going to go into my desktop and I'm going to call it class allocation 123121, whatever I want to call it, right? So I'm just going to give it a name, save it into the desktop. Now I saved what's called an IIF file. So in order to import an IIF file, we're going to go back into QuickBooks Desktop here. Let me close this report. And we're back to looking at this report, the P&L by class. And essentially what I'm going to do, again, we're going to take all these numbers here. And when I import the IIF file, it is going to remove all those numbers from the original admin or from the admin class into each of the classes. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to click on the File menu, Utilities, Import, IIF. So again, File, Utilities, Import, IIF. Once I select that, I'm going to click OK. So IIF must close everything that's on the screen. I'm going to click on Import IIF, click on that, and then I'm going to go to Desktop and or wherever I save my IIF file, select my class allocation IIF, click on Open, and then just wait a minute or two. And then once QuickBooks is done, obviously the bigger the journal entry, the longer the process will take. So once this is done, it will say success. We imported one transaction. I'm going to click Done. I'm going to go back to Reports. I'm going to go to Company Financial. I'm going to go to Profit and Loss by Class. The same thing as before. In this case, I'm going to do all dates because I was doing the example with all dates. And you will notice that, like magic, let me actually make this font a little bigger here. You will notice that, like magic, nothing else is sitting here under admin. Look, it's a beautiful thing. Now, there's still something there. If I actually double click in any of these, you're going to see the journal entry sitting here. You're going to see the original history, which I love. You get to see the original history, and then you get to see the journal entry. So I'm going to double click on that journal entry, and then you can see that's the journal entry that was 100% automated from the import, which is really, really cool. Now, for some reason, when it imports, it might not organize it the way you have it originally, just because of the way that QuickBooks brings data into from IIF, but it does the journal entry. It's a balanced journal entry, and all the notes are there correctly. So why are the notes important? Again, when I'm looking at my report and I'm trying to see what happened, I get to see the memo and I get to see exactly what is it that we did. We reallocated that expense to Class A, Class B, and Class C, and that is a beautiful thing. I think that even though it's a little bit clunky to export the trial balance and run the template and then bring it back to IIF, that takes a long time if you only have a couple of categories and a couple of classes. But when you have 10 classes and maybe 30 or 40 accounts, this is a very tedious process. I would prefer more to do this process, especially because we're gonna be less prone for errors and rounding errors and that sort of thing. That's what I recommend using my macro. So my macro, I'm selling it for $75. Why $75? That's just a number that I came up with. And it might be worth your while if you could save an hour or two from doing one journal entry. You can use it on limited files. You can use it with unlimited QuickBooks Desktop files. I'll show you the link of where you click to buy that a little bit later on. But I'm going to show you the other example, which is moving things from unclassified into the classes. Now, this is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more complex, because I cannot run a filter by unclassified class when I run my trial balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a differential trial balance of a trial balance with classes and without classes, and I'll show you how that works. And then in Excel, we'll do the cleanup. So, okay, same principle as before. We're going to start with reports. We're going to go into accounting and taxes, and we're going to go into trial balance. Again, we're doing the same thing, but in this case, we're moving things from no class, from completely unclassified. I'm going to right-click here, make this report a little bit bigger to make it easier to read for the video. And then I'm going to click on Customize Report, and I'm going to go into Filters. And under Account, I'm still going to do the same thing. Choose All Ordinary Income and Expense as the account. Click OK. And there we go. That's my P&L information only. Now I'm going to click on, this is So I'm going to click on Customize Report to show you something. Customize Report, Filters, and then go to Class. This says All Classes, and All Classes includes empty classes. So this is going to be the first. This is going to be the first export. So I'm going to export this first. So this is going to be the entire, all the numbers. So I'm going to go to Excel, create worksheet, and export this one. Again, we're trying to isolate the unclassified portion. So we're going to export all this first, and then I'm going to go back into QuickBooks. Actually, we can minimize my macro, just focus on the exported file. Leave that there. I'm not going to delete anything or clean up anything yet. I'm going to go back into QuickBooks. Now I'm going to run on Customize Report. This is the trickiest part. Customize Report, go to Filters, and then I'm going to go into Class, and I'm going to select multiple classes, and then I'm going to select all my classes, basically all but unclassified. Then I'm going to click OK, and then OK, and what that's going to do is going to show me a slightly different report that contains everything but the unclassified. If you actually go back into the spreadsheet here, you're going to see that my total construction income in this case is $31,540. And then when I go back into QuickBooks, $31,540 versus, go back into QuickBooks here, $31,040. So that's a $500 difference, right? So now that we're going to export this second one, this is the one that contains the difference with empty classes. I'm going to go ahead and click on Export to Excel as well. So now essentially I have two worksheets that have essentially the same information in this particular case. And I'm going to take those two spreadsheets and put them together, okay? So I have my two spreadsheets here. They look very, very similar. And all we're trying to do is spot the differences. So I'm going to take this debits and credits, copy and paste this in one of the spreadsheets. And I'm going to use a different method here. I'm going to copy, and then when I go into the other spreadsheet, I'm going to paste values. That's a really important one. And also, I'm going to just do bold here and do 16 font, again, to make it easier to read. So I'm going to delete these columns in the middle of these two, column in the middle of these two, column in the middle of these two. I'm just going to copy and paste debit and credit here, so it makes a little bit more sense when you're looking at it. I'll delete total, and also let me use number formatting again, so it starts looking a little bit better. So now remember, we have a balance sheet here, or a trial balance, that contains the original number that was unfiltered and then the number that was filtered. So we want to know the difference between the two. So I'm going to go here to Unclassified. I'm just going to type Unclassified there. I'm going to make this bold and make this whole column 16 font again, so it's easier for you to read. And essentially what I want is I want the numbers here to represent that positive, negative version of the debit and the credit. So I'm going to do equals debit minus credit of the second adjusted column plus credit minus debit of the first column. So that's the formula. So we do debit minus credit of the second column plus credit minus debit of the second column. Don't ask, that's just arithmetically, mathematically how it most work. Then I'm going to press enter. Then we get a negative 500 in there, and I just click and drag that down until I get all the numbers that I want. So at this point, I can just copy this column and paste values. I can now delete all the other stuff that I don't need. I can delete all the first numbers because I already copy and pasted values. I can also get rid of the zeros. I don't need any of the zeros. At the end of the day, in this example, I'm literally just adjusting these two. Let me open up my macro workbook one more time. Go back to step 1 for input. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the stuff that's there now. Hit clear contents. I'll leave the class allocation because that stuff is going to be pretty universal across all my adjustments, or for the most part. And then I'm going to go back into my original sort of two-column, let me delete this, two-column piece of information, which is my account and the debit and credit, the current balance. Copy this and bring that into my journal entry macro, paste values in here. Beautiful thing. Then I click here on create reallocation journal template. Click on that. Then I'm going to go to step 2 of the output. There's my journal entry. Remember, this time around, we're going to leave class empty because we're going from unclassified, not from an admin class. I'm going to click on process IIF file, click on confirm selection. I'm going to save this as class reallocation 2 or something like that. Hit save. Done. Don't need my spreadsheet anymore. I can close this. Don't need this anymore. Now let's open up QuickBooks and let's close that and go into the file menu, utilities, import IIF. So file, utilities, import IIF. Click on import IIF. Click on that, select the new allocation, click on open. Wait for that journal entry to complete. Pretty short journal entry, took a couple seconds. Click on done and then go to reports, company financial, profit and loss by class, and we're expecting to see nothing in the unclassified column. So let's do all dates here, which is what we're using. And there we go. Absolutely nothing on the unclassified columns. I'll make this font a little bit bigger. Nothing on unclassified columns. If I click on this 0, double click on that, I'm going to see the history. I will see the original 500 and then the adjusted 500. And then, as I mentioned earlier, beautiful notes that make sense out of everything that we did. So that's the techniques I showed you with the admin class and with the unclassified. Unclassified, it's a little bit more hairy. So if I had a choice between picking from a current class or an unclassified, obviously I would want to get something from a regular class. So let me show you about how you go about buying this IIF macro from me. So you're going to click on the link that's in the description. You're going to go into this page that says Class Reallocation Journal Entry Macro for QuickBooks. You're going to click here where it says Buy Now. You enter your email address and then click on Complete Order. And then if you have a PayPal account, you can enter your PayPal credentials. But if you don't work with PayPal, just click on Pay with Debit and Credit Card. Click on that and then enter your name, address, billing address, and credit card information. You click on Pay Now and you process the sale. Then you'll get an email from Send Owl. It's called Send Owl Downloads. Just a random order number there. And it says here, thanks for ordering from us. You click on that link right there. That's going to allow you to download. Just click on the big download button on the right-hand side. And then you can download that into your desktop, run the macro, and go from there. I hope this video was useful, and I'll see you on the next one.